Podcasting from Heroes Media Group with real, relevant, and raw opinions. This is the College Sports Hour with your host, Clint McPherson, and co-host, Greg Dixon.
Welcome back, everyone. This is episode 22 of the College Sports Hour. I'm your host, Clint, and I'm sitting here with my partner in crime, Greg. What's going on, brother?
Hey, man, 22 weeks, man. 22 weeks of the College Sports Hour, man. It doesn't seem like it's been that long.
It seems like we're blowing right through these things, man. It's one of those things that we seem to be kind of dedicated to this, right? About now.
Yeah.
22 episodes in.
We better be.
So it's one of those things where it's like I pitched the idea to you, you're on board, and man, we find ourselves 22 episodes later. That's kind of hard to believe. We started in September of last year during the football season. Felt like a couple weeks later than we should have to launch a new college sports podcast. But at the end of the day, we jumped right in, and since then, man, we haven't looked back.
That's true, man, and I'm ready to keep it rolling this week.
All right, man. Let's talk about what is going down on today's episode. We'll be talking about the NCAA granting a waiver to Ohio State's quarterback Justin Fields, which is allowing him to play for the Buckeyes in 2019. I remember last week or the week before that, we actually talked about this being something that was going to hurt Ohio State if Justin Fields was not granted that eligibility. But, man, big news coming down this week about him actually being able to play immediately, which is great for the Buckeyes.
Yeah, man. If we want to jump into this right now, man, but I'm shocked to be completely honest with you on one side of this conversation, because there's no way I thought that they would just allow him. I understand that there's some conversations that not necessarily happen behind closed doors, but that Justin Fields made a really good plea and a conversation as to why he should be allowed to transfer. But I just want to throw this out there because I smell conspiracy.
I hear you.
I smell conspiracy.
I hear you on that, my man. I think that is big news for them, though. That's going to help the Buckeyes be immediate contenders, and we'll talk about that here in a second. But we'll also talk about a few non-college football playoff teams from 2018 that are quickly heading in the college football playoff direction after seeing what they've been able to do on the recruiting trail. Then we'll transition right into what's going on during are actually currently in the college basketball landscape. And then we'll talk about some of the bubble teams, which most of our conversation is going to be focused like normal on the AP Top 25 because they are deserving of that conversation.
Yep, let's do it, man. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be hey guys, I'm just going to go ahead and let you know, this is going to be a great episode for us. So go ahead, sit back, get your popcorn ready, because we're ready to throw down on this one.
Without a doubt, man. So with that said, guys, let's start off with some college football and talk about the NCAA granting a waiver to Ohio State's quarterback Justin Fields, which, again, like I said, allows him to immediately be eligible to play for the Buckeyes in 2019.
As I said earlier, it's surprising to me the sense that they made this announcement, announcing it on Friday, that he's able to come in there and jump right in for this upcoming season. We had mentioned in a couple of last podcasts about how Ohio State's season was really going to hang in the balance a little bit on Justin Fields being able to play, because they didn't have anybody proven behind him. What was going on here, the switch over at head coach now with Ryan Day taking over the position, getting his chance to run the show fully and completely and totally. He did a great job in the absence of Urban Meyer last year. And then, man, I tell you what, here's where I'm coming at from this thing, though, of wondering about what's really happening there behind closed doors. Allowing Justin Fields to play, I think, is a great thing. First of all, let me say that I think it's a win for football players to be able to say, hey, coaches can switch and they can go anywhere they want to and be allowed to coach immediately. Why can't players? So I think this is a great step in the right direction for them. However, I do wonder where the NCAA is sitting on this because of the program that they allowed to do this for. This is one of those unprecedented moves that in years past wouldn't be allowed to take place. But now the Ohio State University, where chances are they weren't going to be they weren't going to be a top contender or anything like that without Justin Fields being able to play. But somehow, some way, this season they allow him to come in there and to keep Ohio State, and what I think will be a very relevant conversation all throughout next year, going all the way up and leading all the way up to the college football playoff.
Yeah, and this is an interesting situation totally. When you look at it, it was announced this past Friday. And for the individuals that don't know this rule that much out there that's currently listening to this, typically when you have a transfer quarterback, they have to sit out. And they have a 1-year waiting period for basically the transferring student athlete. But with them allowing Phils to forego that usual 1-year waiting period for that transferring student athlete, man, it just seems like it opens up a can of this is going to be the norm from going forward, right? And when you look at it, it's just like, okay, I got it. He wasn't in the best situation, but he is the expected front runner to win the Buckeyes starting job, right? This spring, when it starts up in March, he is the clear front runner, obviously with his talent. That's why, Martell ends up leaving. He goes off and does what he does.
Yeah.
And goes to Miami, which great move on him because I think he saw the writing on the wall. But there was a little bit of rumors when this was happening that really the only way Fields would actually do this was if he knew something. As far as this is concerned, he kind of had that feeling. Like Ohio State kind of had that feeling that they were going to be able to grant, and be able to waive this rule. Which, again, man, it seems like the NCAA, on a case-per-case basis, I'm all about, them granting the medical, red shirt and looking at somebody's situation. But this guy was not injured, right? So when you look at it, they continue to adjust the policy and make it just that much easier for transferring athletes to find an immediate path to playing. And I'm cool with it if you're going to do it and going forward. If this is something that is basically going to start the college free agency, as you would want to say it, then you might as well this is what broke through this wall, and this has to be something that continues to happen moving forward, or you're just, again, you open like a Pandora's box, right?
Well, let's see. So last spring, the NCAA adjust the transferring rules to to kind of make it maybe not necessarily make it a little bit easier, but to open up some doorways and some pathways for people to be able to transfer who they feel like need to transfer. And the way that it states is they got to be documented mitigation circumstances that the change of schools was made to better impact his health, safety, and well-being of the college football athlete. And so there's a lot of conversation swirling around about why this may have been worked out. A lot of people are pointing back to an incident that happened where a baseball player from UGA may have used a racial slur, if I'm not mistaken, against Justin Fields on that, and that right there may have been it. Fields has not confirmed that to be true. He hasn't said anything about the conversations that took place between him and the NCAA committee that allowed him to not only that he went ahead and transferred, but also allowed him to be able to get immediate access to be able to play this year. If that's the case, okay. We don't know at this point. I mean, we're still speculating ourselves as to what allowed him to be able to get this immediate eligibility to be able to play this season.
Yeah, and with it, it's almost, and I'm not saying the race card was, whatever this happened, the racial slur that might have came about it, that's a loophole, right? I mean, somebody uses a racial slur against you, now you can claim the health and safety and well-being, whether you felt intimidated or not. The way you look at Justin Fields, he's a big kid. He's a college football player, so I know he's not intimidated by some random UGA player, using a racial slur against him. We go out every day and racial slurs, whether we like it or not, are still used, which is a huge point of contention with the race baiting, depending on what you're looking at. And I hate that we're still in that type of environment, right?
Right.
Because race, no matter what color you are, it shouldn't even be thought of with the time and place we are in 2019 in the United States or worldwide, whatever you may have it, man. Black, white, whatever. It just blows my mind that this is still an issue that we got going on in the world today. And because when I look at people, I don't see color, man. I just see people that just want to be who they want to be, right? We
Yeah.
can't help what color, we can't help what religions we've grew up in. It's just a part of life. But again, finding this loophole is just very interesting to me because, it's like, and I'm not saying this didn't happen, because obviously for them to find this loophole or whatever it is, this had to be something that really bothered him or bothered, whatever point in time this took place. Is very sad that this could have been the case. But I mean, this is pretty interesting to find whoever came up with this or whoever thought of this, whether it was a lawyer or whatever. And I'm sure this has maybe been done before. But at the end of the day, it's crazy to think about that, that one specific thing, because if you look at it, we can all take the health, safety, and well-being if we don't feel right? And I'm not saying you take the racial part out of it, but just let's say, hey, I want to transfer. How can you prove that my health, safety, and well-being was not, a part in that? And that's going to be something that it seems like from this point going forward, anybody's going to be able to use this clause.
Well, I mean, I think that there's a certain extent where that's true. I mean, because it simply says health, safety, and well-being. Well, I mean, if I go into a hostile environment where I'm the visiting team, and I mean,
exactly.
I can certainly say where people were shouting slurs, maybe whatever they are, at me, and okay, well, maybe I don't feel safe now, or I don't know about my well-being. Maybe I can say that you, as the university, aren't treating me the way that you said that you would when you came and recruited me. So, I mean, my well-being now is not being taken care of. I don't think you're going to help me get to the next level like you said you were going to. So I'm going to go. I feel like it's time for me to go to a program that I think will do a better job of that. So I think it does begin to say, where does the conversation end in that phrase? If we just want to simply wipe away the phrase and, kind of do away with this whole policy about, well, you know what, if you feel like you want to transfer, I don't know that, outside of, any real grounds, if you want to transfer. Once again, I think that I still think that we're holding the athletes to a different standard than we do a coaching staff.
Oh, without a doubt. But I just see there's so many things that could fit within that clause, right? Like you can sit there and talk about anything, because I felt intimidated one day because of this or that, or because I went into a hostile environment. Take college basketball, for example, and because this is so prevalent in college basketball, and I know it's in college football, but because you're in an open environment, you can't hear it as clearly, right? So when you're in a stadium, or you're in one of these basketball courts or domes or whatever they're playing in, right? It's such a more compact environment. So when you hear them chanting, I mean, we got some vulgar people out there, right?
Sure.
Duke has it. I mean, everybody in nationwide, they have crazy chants going on towards the other team. So you can take it there and be like, look, we went to Boston College, or we were playing at home, and because I felt intimidated, I feel like transferring, or because I felt my health, safety, and well-being just for some innocent chants, even though they're vulgar or whatever, and pointed directly at you as a person. I mean, I'm just saying this can be used for anything.
Now let me ask you a question. Take out the news of what we're reading about the possibility as to why or how Fields was able to get his eligibility for this year. Taking that away, what would you have said was the reason that Justin Fields was transferring?
Playing.
When
you think about it, I'm not saying he's not going to be better than Fromm or whoever else was going to be in front of him or whatever, because everybody saw him as a future, right? But it was like, I want immediate playing time because he knows his talent. So that's exactly why, right? Because he didn't want to have to compete.
If it had been said that Jake Fromm was no longer the starter next year,
he would have stayed.
Justin Fields is he staying or is he transferring?
Oh, absolutely, he's staying.
Okay, so I mean,
but at the end of the day, it could possibly be the way they set him up. And
sure, I'm not saying that Kirby Smart and UGA did great by him or anything like that. My question is simply this: if Kirby Smart had sat Jake Fromm down and Justin Fields down at the end of the season and said, Jake, you probably need to go ahead. I think he's eligible for the NFL draft. I don't know if he is or not, but he'd say maybe he's not. But anyways, Jake, you're not going to be the starter next year. We're going to ride with Justin Fields. We feel like he gives us a better chance to win. Does Justin Fields look back at Kirby Smart and say, "Yeah, you probably want to rethink that decision because I'm transferring and I'm out"?
No, I mean, absolutely not. So if he knows he's going to be the man going in, number one, he without a doubt staying at UGA. That's how I believe. Now,
sure,
I can't speak for him, and this racial slur thing, if it is fact, it could have actually stuck with him, right?
And once again, Justin Fields in a public forum has not confirmed that to be the case. So I mean, make sure we state that.
That's true, but at the same time, if I was the player, I probably wouldn't do that either, because you're opening up this whole thing of like, that's all somebody's going to ask you about, right? You say, yes, it was. Now they're going to want to know what he said, who said it, that. And I mean, it's just going to be forever ending. So I can see why he would not come out and say anything about it. I mean, I would stick to whatever I was, because if he says something, somebody could possibly catch him, and this is all BS, right? For him moving forward. Yeah. And like, hey, was it really used against you or what? So I can understand why you're hush hush, whether you want to protect yourself so the question's not asked about it, or whether you want to protect that this is all fabricated, right? I mean, and I'm not saying it is. I'm not calling this guy out, because I believe Justin Fields is an honest and
we've got no reason to doubt him.
That's full of integrity, right?
Yeah, we got no reason to doubt. He's given us no reason to this point in time that we know of that he's given us any reason to doubt his word at this point in time.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, man, this is just, like I said, it was interesting. We thought that going forward that it was going to be one of those things to where this was not going to happen. Now it's happened. Even though he joins an inexperienced quarterback group on Ohio State's 2019 season in Fields, he is going to be their number one, right? I mean, you just got to think that his top competition for the starting spot is expected to be somebody we've already talked about in previous episode, redshirt freshman Matthew Baldwin. So he could get pushed for that job, but it's not something that you take a proven quarterback like Fromm and you're competing against him, right? You're having an unexperienced versus another unexperienced quarterback, where you have the more clout behind you because of what you've done previously. Right. So, but the interesting thing is the eligibility boosted Ohio State's odds to win the college football playoff national championship from 12-1 to 8-1. So right there, I mean, that shows you that Ohio State's going to be within it next year.
Justin Fields, I mean, there's a little bit, we've got a little bit of tape on him. We've seen him play a little bit, but it's really all about upside. We recognize that there is tremendous upside there for this kid. That's why he's going to Ohio State. That's why he's going to win the starting job. Maybe not. He may be better than the cat. I don't know. Than the cat that's already there. I don't know. But it's all about upside at this point in time. And we're looking at Tua. We're looking at Kelly. Not Kelly Bryant, but Kelly Bryant is out the door.
Exactly.
But we're looking at. We're looking at our cat from Clemson and everything. We're looking at what these guys are doing. I mean, Justin Fields. They're thinking he might be able to fit in that same category.
Yeah. The only thing, like we talked about, Matthew Baldwin having is the red shirt under him, right? He's got to learn the playbook, but how much is that playbook going to be the same when you got a new coach coming in, right? Exactly. And so it a lot of things could change going forward, so it kind of evens the playing field for Fields going forward.
Hey, man, it's a big day for Ohio State. It's a big day for Justin Fields. It's a big day for college football and this ruling coming down, and I think it's a big day for all college football athletes kind of having this win per se up underneath their belt and knowing that, hey, there is a chance for transferring to become a little bit more the norm for us.
Yeah, and again, like I said, this might be, even though it's been more prevalent as the years go on, this is basically opening up the free agency list of college football, right? It's
sure
like,
enough.
Hey, I got some competition over here. This guy's a proven true starter. I thought from day one I was going to be it. Let's hit the road, Jack, right? And let's go to another team that's going to be competitive, and I could possibly land a starting job.
True story.
So let's continue to the college football conversation and talk about a few teams that obviously did not make the college football playoff in 2018, but are quickly, through recruiting and through a little bit of more adjustments, are actually heading in that direction, I believe, in the near future, if not next year and a couple years from now. And so, and this is interesting because right now, we all know who made it last year. We had Alabama, we had Clemson, we had Notre Dame, and we had Oklahoma. So those are the four teams that were actually picked for the college football playoff. We all witnessed it. And then, who went on to do what they did? Clemson, right? And so, so that was the battle of the most recent playoff. But now we have a few teams that I think, because of some moves I've been paying attention to, that possibly, and I've picked 5 of them that can possibly close the gap because their recruiting has been insane. And the efforts, and we know one of them is continuously up there in the recruiting class with Jimbo Fisher. But, man, these teams could take their conferences by storm next year and actually be a few teams that possibly derails Clemson's and Alabama's, dominance going forward in a year from now, right?
Well, I mean, yeah, I think that's the beauty of a new season is everybody starts out, tied. Everybody starts out at 0-0. Everybody's got dreams. Everybody's got, who's going to be the surprise teams this year? Who's going to be teams that sneak in there? Who's going to be teams that come out of nowhere? I don't know that any one of these teams right here are going to be teams that come out of nowhere because they've been kind of knocking on the door a little bit. But it's teams that are certainly closing the gap. I still believe that Clemson and Alabama are leading the pack. But I think you can certainly say that some of these teams are closing the gap.
And when you look at it, and let's start with the first team that we're referring to, and that's I've already mentioned his name, Mr. Jimbo Fisher and the Texas A&M Aggies, right?
Right.
Because not only was he a clutch recruiter when he was at Florida State University, but he's proven to take it with him over to the SEC. And right now, man, he's become one of the SEC's top recruiting programs. And this is insane because he's currently holding the number 3 class in the SEC and in the country. I mean, this guy continues to bring in, players that are going to play. Now,
right.
My thing is he was bringing in some real good recruiting classes for Florida State, but some of these players just don't pan out. And you don't always know whatever they're coming with. If they're 4 or 5, they just might not work when they get to college and under the coaching scheme that you implement. But he's starting to sign some bigger bodies on the line of scrimmage, which he failed to do because of his coaches, I guess, whether he confided in them too much at Florida State or what. He needs a line of scrimmage, and he actually saw, I believe from what he's doing at Texas A&M, he saw that as a weakness at Florida State, and he's trying to really make sure that doesn't happen at Texas A&M.
Absolutely, and let's also think about where he's at now. Not that Florida State, not that you don't recruit to Florida State. Florida State is a name that, in with its history there, it recruits itself. Don't get me wrong, but Texas A&M, it's not like he is hurting there either as far as facilities are concerned or in the surrounding area. I mean, he's got the lay of the land, to be able to. Certainly, he's recruiting against other people and up top programs and stuff like that. But he does have the opportunity there to recruit out some great players. And what he's got right now, he's got one of the youngest, most talented rosters in the country with quarterback Kellen Mond, and the majority of his weapons back this season. The Aggies are going to add a nucleus of several early enrollees, including ESPN 300 defensive end DeMaven Leal, who is poised to play quickly. I mean, this guy, I agree with you, man. Jimbo Fisher's gone out there. He's been knocking on doors, man. He's been getting his boys out there, recruiting hard, and it's starting to pay off. It's starting to show off a little bit here. His first season there in Texas A&M, I would say, came as a little bit of a shocker, a little bit of a surprise. They overachieved slightly, I would say. So there's something to build on there as they move forward. And now with these, top-tier recruits that are coming in there, this top recruiting class he's got coming on in there, he's going to continue to make some noise there in the SEC.
Yeah, and with him able to have those facilities behind him, right? It's not like they're short on money over there at Texas A&M. No. And it's not and if they don't have the premier facilities in the country, they have one of the premier facilities, right? So he's not going to be hurting in that regard because Florida State, not a bad place. Great, that's my team. They improved a lot over the years with Jimbo Fisher at the helm. But, they don't have the deep pockets like a Texas A&M, a Texas have. And so he has that. So you're also able to leverage, and leverage that. And then really fulfill the needs when you know you're short on a tight end, when you're short in the secondary and stuff like that. And you could just focus solely on that. And I think, them focus on the line at Texas A&M over the last 2 seasons with bringing in some recruits, some safeties. I mean, really are solidifying themselves. Again, a young, talented roster. So look forward for this Texas A&M Aggie team to really be a team that's very competitive, not only in the SEC, but in the country and on the verge. And don't be surprised if they make the college football playoff next year or the year after that. They're really knocking on the door right now.
Absolutely, 100% agreed. But there's another team in that same state that is knocking on that door as well and made a lot of noise this year and certainly did in the All-State Sugar Bowl.
Without a doubt. And that's Texas, the Texas Longhorns. And so, man, after what they did, that has gotten them a ton of buzz on the recruiting trail, right? And I know that, hey, we're back scenario probably helped. That's something they probably have playing on the loudspeaker, right? And so
no doubt.
When you see what they're able to bring in, they most recently acquired the athlete, Brew McCoy, who's, he signed with USC in December, but decided to transfer to Texas, which is a huge steal. Yep. But the reason he went, I believe, really came from Texas is because Cliff Kingsbury goes off to the NFL, right? And so
Exactly.
he didn't have that coach that he was looking forward to go over to USC. But man, if granted immediate eligibility by the NCAA, which again, here's another situation, right? Another Justin Fields situation. McCoy will make an immediate impact with the Horns. But even if he's not eligible, man, he is going to be a long-term prospect and something that, Tom Herman's group can look forward to having and playing for him.
Exactly. I mean, this right here is a team that we really saw begin to turn the tables this year. Man, they got, as we've mentioned in some previous podcasts, man, they've got some people that are returning. Man, they've got their quarterback heading into this year. But Tom Herman's group lost a ton in the trenches on both sides of the ball in this previous season. But the Longhorns went out and hit it out of the park during December with getting people to sign from in-state offensive tackle Tyler Johnson and then 4-star tackle Isaiah Hookfin. Man, both of those guys right there are going to be making some impacts coming into this season. It's going to be really, really interesting to see how well they get these guys to gel and how quickly they can. But, man, if they can get these guys to start playing in the trenches the way that the rest of the team operated last year, Texas is going to be a tough out for everybody.
I mean, without a doubt. So when you look at it, when Texas claims they're back, the jury is still out on that, right? So we saw what they were capable of in some spurts last year. We were like, oh, Texas has to do this to claim they're back. They kind of backed that up a little bit, but then took 2 steps back by losing a game, And so when you look at it, man, under Herman, there's just a different feel right now, right? So that they haven't felt and experienced in quite some time in Austin, but there is definitely a chemistry and definitely a confidence that this team has going for them right now. And so if you're a Texas fan, if you're involved with Texas Longhorns, I mean, you got to have that optimism going forward. And it seems like one of those teams, again, that is not too far off on knocking on that college football playoff door.
Well, I mean, this right here, every year you hear about Texas. I mean, even in the years that they're not good, you hear about the Texas faithful that are sitting there saying, "Hey, this is going to be the year. This is going to be the year that we bounce back." I think there is legitimate reason to have confidence for Texas moving forward now, not just this, hot air that people would breathe or anything like that. And I think Texas really actually is on their way to being back. And so, I mean, but speaking of teams that are on their way to being back, maybe we got a little team that a little something about down there in Florida that might be on its way to being back as well.
As much as I want to say that is Florida State, and as much as this pains me to say that this is the Florida Gators, I'm going to go ahead and say it. Because, man, when you look at it, they have arguably one of the best football coaches right now on their sideline. And I'm going to say that just for the simple fact that what he started to do at Mississippi State, which is not historically a team that you can get playing or trending in the right direction.
Sure.
And so the talent he was able to bring with him and what he was actually able to accomplish, and I think overachieve in year one by taking an average Franks under the QB1, loses. I mean, you can tell over that period of time, it seemed like he transformed that team to playing like a team the Florida Gators faithful wants them to play like. And he's shown a key eye for identifying and developing players throughout his career. And as much as it pains me that the Florida Gators have Dan Mullen as their coach, I mean, man, this is the team we have to talk about for a second.
Well, I mean, you look at what they were able to do this year. They were right there competing with Georgia all throughout the year for the SEC East title. So, I mean, they were right there, and nobody really anticipated that was going to be the case, and especially not that they were going to have the season and the number of wins that they were able to put together with winning 10 games, making it to a New Year's Day bowl, and beating a Michigan team that a lot of people throughout the year had Michigan making it into the Final Four. So, I mean, this isn't a squad that anybody needs to dismiss. And I don't think that I'm with you, man. I don't think anybody needs to look at this year as a fluke kind of year. Dan Mullen is turning this program around, and then he went out and hit the recruiting trail as well, and has got some boys coming in there, got some studs coming in there, recruiting out of Florida and out of Georgia. Man, it's gonna be interesting to watch this team this year.
Yeah, when you look at the limited resources he had at Mississippi State compared to what he has now at Florida,
wow,
and the player pool that he's going to be able to select from and compete against, I mean, it's just amazing. And so, and being a coach and being able to leverage that is just strong because you can say, hey, this is what we did over here, and now we have this. and whether it's the coaches you bring in, whether it's the facilities that he has now, whether it's, him able to pull out of certain areas that he wasn't able to focus on at Mississippi State, he has the clout of them being the Florida Gators. Right. I mean, when you say we're the Florida Gators, it means something. I mean, especially in Florida, right? I mean, whether you're Florida State, same thing with Florida State. Any of that old prestige, what Steve Spurrier started doing for the Florida Gators, and what they were able to accomplish, and what that's meant over the years, that means something. But it's just taking the right person to bring that to the front. Like Urban Meyer brought him back, and you just need that coach. And Dan Mullen looks like he's somebody in that coach that can do that. And with this recruiting trail, what he did this recruiting cycle, adding the ESPN 300 cats, the defensive tackle in Jalen Humphreys, the offensive linebacker in Muhammad Diabaté, the 4-star linebacker in Tyrone Hopper. I mean, man, the list goes on with all these 300s, right? You got Chris Steele, a cornerback. I mean, man, it's ridiculous what he's been able to do in this short amount of time. And I just see that a trend going forward in the Florida Gators being a team that is a lot closer than my team, unfortunately.
Well, I mean, a lot of times we talk about momentum. Momentum doesn't just stop when the season ends. I mean, you depending upon how you end that season, I mean, you catapulted yourself into spring practices and into off-season training and the recruiting trail and everything like that. Florida certainly has been able to kickstart some momentum there and move their team a little bit closer and a little bit closer, where they're going to be competing with Georgia for that SEC East title again this year.
I would agree with that. So let's move on to Penn State, the last two teams we have to talk about. This is a team, remember, they're not elite. They're great. We're not elite, we're great. But at the end of the day, when you see what James Franklin has been able to do, whether it's his short time, how fast he turned this program around, on the field since 2016, Penn State is 31-9. So you can't take that lightly. That means they're doing work. They're out there winning games, right? And they've been trending up in the recruiting class for a while now. And so when you're leaning on inking, or when you did ink the top 5 recruiting class in the 2018, and you're currently sitting around the top 10 in the class rankings currently, I mean, you can say that, again, Penn State and James Franklin, they continue to move forward and continue to find ways, and they're not that far off. And I'm not saying they're going to be great. Don't give me elite. No, elite. Sorry. Okay. I'm not going to say they're going to be elite. But, they have a chance to make an immediate impact and do some good things over there for the Nittany Lions.
Well, you think about the recruiting class that they had last year being in the top 5. I mean, those guys right there now have a year of experience up underneath their belt to be able to, after they acclimated to college football life and knowing what that's all about. And now you got this class coming in there as well. I mean, they're going to do nothing but trend upward. At least they should be. I mean, we're all kind of hedging all of our bets here about what they are on paper and what we think they're going to translate into actually on the field. But man, you got some guys that are coming in here once again this year with the rankings they've got. You got Devin Ford, who's among the nation's best at the running back position, man. So and a second top 300 running back in the class, Noah Kane, that's coming in as well. I mean, that's 2 offensive studs that are coming in right there. They're going to have a chance to make an impact. You got some defensive players that are coming in there. You got a wide receiver, John Dunmore, who at one point in time had committed to Florida, had backed out of that one, and now is coming up to play at Penn State. Man, you got some guys that are going to make some impact, and now it's all about if that coaching staff can take those great players and make them elite players.
Oh, without a doubt. And I just think that the recruiting efforts, coupled with the fact that they have the entire 2-deep roster and QB Tommy Stevens back, is going to lead us to believe that, again, they're not slowing down anytime soon, and they're going to be here to stay. And as much as, I'm not a huge fan of Penn State, not anything against it. I just hate when you go out and say that, we're great, and then you can't back it up, right? And that's for anybody. And that's whether it's a Florida State coach, it doesn't matter. I just go do your work on the field, right? Just do your business and let the results speak for itself. But, man, like I said, Penn State is going to be a Big Ten contender for years to come, and that's just with the talent and the coaches and what they have going on at Penn State. I just think that's the case.
There you go.
Let's talk about the last team real quick, Ohio State. I mean, we've talked about them before. We talked about them in the past, but Ohio State. They've been a dominant field for a while over the last several seasons with Coach Urban Meyer in the helm. recruiting cycle, on the recruiting trail, they've been dominant over the last several seasons. So, now that they have that new coach, Ryan Day at the helm, a few roster questions, but you kind of those alleviate a little bit when you know that Justin Fields is going to be QB1 coming into this year.
I think for me, the thing that, Justin Fields kind of puts it over the top a little bit. But, I mean, even coming into the season, while we did have question marks at the quarterback position, that defense was coming back pretty much with everybody intact, pretty much with all of it, with the guys that they ended the season with. They're a little bit in need of some leadership. And so you got now Greg Madison, his hire away from Michigan was a huge boost to them. He's going to be able to come in there, provide some strong leadership, provide some strong defensive schemes in there that's going to make this front even better than they already were.
Definitely. And when you look at it, the 2019 class just, isn't big, but when you look at it, more than half of the 16 signees rank within the ESPN 300. So they have a lot of talent coming in. They've addressed a few issues that they had, in this cycle that should provide depth and early contributions. But, man, Ohio State, whether they have big classes or not, they get the job done typically on the field, and that's where you want to see it. So don't be surprised, because Ryan Day did what he did when Coach Urban Meyer was suspended at the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
With the talent, he's going to be able to bring in great recruits. Garrett Wilson's a number 2 ranked receiver in the 2019 cycle. So, Justin Fields is going to have some ballers to throw to. So at the end of the day, Ohio State's not going to be a slouch, and they're going to be another, Big Ten contender for years to come. In general, right?
Well, I mean, you think about it too, man. This team, I would imagine, is going to be playing with a little bit of a chip on its shoulder, in the sense that they did not make it into the college football playoff last year after having won the Big Ten, and I think most everybody agreed that they shouldn't have been in there. But coming out of that now, saying, you know what, we were the conference champions of the Big Ten and we were left out of the college football playoff. Let's go prove to everybody, what we're really all about. So might be a little bit of that coming into play as well. The defense will keep them in the games, but it's going to be all about the development of Justin Fields, in my opinion.
Yeah, and what really hurt them, really making it, man, was that the way they just got ran over by Purdue.
Yeah,
and then Purdue didn't help. And Purdue didn't help them, later on in the season by doing what they did.
True story.
All right, man. That wraps up our college football segment. Let's go and jump right in and switch topics and transition right into some college basketball. So Week 14 is in the books. And as we transition to Week 15, let's take a look at the AP Top 25 that came out today.
Yes, sir. Let's do it, man. Some great things. A little bit of moving and shaking happening there in the top 5 after a huge matchup on Saturday between, at that time, number 2 Duke and number 3 Virginia. And Duke goes into Charlottesville and comes out with a win, baby.
That was a big win, too, and the way they did it was impressive. So when you look at the NCAA, basketball committee, which slated Duke as the number 1 overall seed in the initial tournament rankings over the weekend, that's huge.
Can you blame them?
And so you can't. And I got it. I see that they kept. You can't argue that Tennessee should have stayed number 1 in the AP because of how everything's going.
Yeah.
Tennessee's only has 1 loss. Duke has 2. But when you look at it, man, I mean, even though the Vols received 40 of the 64 first place votes from the media panel, I mean, you can see why Duke is getting the love that they so well deserve after what they did to Virginia over the weekend.
If you can't see why Duke's getting the love, then my assumption to you is that you have not been watching any Duke basketball games. They blow out Boston College, which they should have, by 25 earlier in the week. And then they travel into Charlottesville, which is not an easy environment to play in, against that really, really tough defense. And Duke has probably its best three-point shooting night of the year coming into that thing. They were one of the worst three-point shooting teams in the nation going into that game, and they come out that match just at a blistering pace, able to knock off Virginia, scoring more points on Virginia at home than they've allowed in a decade in Charlottesville. So man, it was a big win, and Virginia would scrap back into it. They'd get as close as about 7, and then Duke would go on a little bit of run, get it back to double digits, and was able to come away with a really big win for that. Tennessee should still be number 1. I'm not arguing that. They haven't lost, and so until you lose, you should still hold your position. But yeah, man, Duke coming away with a really solid win. Got some games this week that are going to be interesting, as does Tennessee.
And I'm fine with, hey, you put Duke at the number one overall seed, but you keep Tennessee, well deserved to stay at number one in the AP.
Yeah.
Really at the end of the day, it's all about how you place in the tournament anyway.
There you
So
go.
so when you look at it, obviously Tennessee's 1, Duke 2, you got Gonzaga 3, Virginia 4. And so when you look at it at the end of the day, the shuffling going around, in the top 25 in general, it looks like there's a lot of movement heading from the 9 spot all the way to the 25 spot. Lot of shuffling, a lot of big wins, a lot of big losses from those teams outside the top 8.
Right.
You had a little bit of shuffling going around between Michigan and Nevada in the rankings. Between the 6 and 7, but not much there. You can't really complain the way Michigan's been playing. Nevada really doesn't play anybody during the year. So you can't really fault them for moving, trading those positions out. But man, when you look at it, Houston moves up 3 spots. Marquette stays 10. But from then on, man, you just got a whole bunch of shuffling going on.
Yeah, Purdue shot up the rank. Villanova moved up 1. Kansas dropped again this week as it's kind of that trend downward is starting to see some things happening there with Kansas. Man, injuries are starting to catch up with those guys, and they're having a tough time being able to turn things around. Texas Tech jumps up. Louisville stays the same, but your boys, the Seminoles from Tallahassee, Florida State, with the biggest move of the week, going from 22 to 17 for this week. So, man, Florida State's really turned that ship back around, and man, they're back playing like they should have been playing all season long.
Yeah, when you look at it, they, like I was saying before a couple weeks ago, it was like they didn't have a bad loss, and then they go off to lose to Pittsburgh, and then they lose to Boston College. Games that you don't need to lose.
Right.
Especially when you're doing what you're doing, right? You're competing, you're in the top 25, but then to reel off some of those games where people expect you to win, that kind of hurts you and throws a big blow to you. But when it comes up, like you said, Florida State did move up. They had some huge wins, none bigger than I think the one at home against Louisville this last game, where they were behind all game. I basically wrote them off. They go on this big run. They tie it. They force overtime. And then from then on, once they hit overtime, it was they shot lights out, basically. Pulled that one off, which was great. But you got teams like Virginia Tech moving down.
Oh, man.
They had a huge drop by falling 11 spots after 2 losses to Louisville and Clemson. And then a team that dropped totally out was, Cincinnati dropped out they dropped out beating Memphis and losing to Houston last week. So when you look at it, the Cincinnati Bearcats, they've been flirting in the top 25, and so with them falling out after losing to Houston, even though Houston's a ranked team right now and moved up to, what is it?
Oh, they're like number 9, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta see that again, man. This top 25, it's hilarious looking at these teams, and it's almost like the top 10 to a certain extent or top 8 kind of solidify their position, and they continuously, there might be a few shuffling, going on between the top teams, but other than that, man, it seems like everybody else outside the top 10 is just trying to figure out where they belong.
Exactly, and there's still obviously some weeks to play in the regular season here. You got conference tournaments to play, then you've got the big daddy of them all, the NCAA tournament. But I think you're really starting to see that separation from the pack. You got the teams that are consistently good week in and week out, and then you got everybody else. And so I would say that right around that top 10 mark is kind of where that line's starting to be drawn in the sand.
Yeah, I would agree. So let's talk a little bit about, just touch a little bit on the power rankings. Okay. And then we'll go right into the bubble watch, which is very interesting to me for this week.
Yeah, man. So Tennessee has been number 1 in the power ranking since about mid-January when the Volunteers were able to escape away from Alabama, and then Duke beat Virginia, and Rick Barnes' team hasn't lost since. But Tennessee is dropping to number 2 in the rankings. You mentioned it a few moments ago. Look, part of that is just the way for the last couple of weeks, they've been playing conference games, but they haven't really been playing any top-tier competition. The SEC isn't really full of top 25 ranked teams, where Duke has been playing some pretty intense competition, having beat Virginia twice in that time frame as well. So Duke's jumped up there to number 1 in the power rankings after beating Virginia for the second time time, which we've already talked about. But man, outside, I mean, the part of that too is the star power. I think you got to look at it from a Duke squad as well. Continuing to watch Zion Williamson, Ben, just be a freak of nature. The block that he had on the 3-point shot.
But hey, just to be fair, okay.
Yeah,
now him jumping as high as he did, one, that's ridiculous.
Agreed.
But for the 3, and I don't remember who was taking the 3.
Yeah.
But did you not see how long
it
took old boy? It took him like good 10 seconds to catch the ball, set, and shoot. I mean, obviously it wasn't 10 seconds. But, dude, you cannot take that much time when it doesn't matter where Zion is on the court. He could have been on the free throw line and you have to shoot the rock like right away because he's going to just jump from nowhere and swat your stuff out of the gym. I mean, and that's exactly what he did.
But when was the last time you saw somebody swat a 3-point shot like that and send the ball into the third row?
And basically clear the shooter, right? Like he could have just continued to elevate. It was that ridiculous.
That joker was a deer in headlights, though. I mean, he saw Zion come. He's like, I know I need to shoot the ball, but he's running at me. I don't know what to do right now. I better shoot now. And then yeah. So
it seemed like he got slower and slower as he realized who was actually jumping in the air. It seemed like it just went reverse from then on. And I was like, dude, you're going to be a highlight reel for the rest of your life, right? Like, for if anything, if your career doesn't pan out, that's going to be a poster forever.
It reminds me of the guy that was playing for the I don't remember the team in the Olympics when Vince Carter jumped over him. Nobody remembered his guy's name, but he's still the poster child for one of Vince Carter's greatest dunk in history.
Yeah, but in talking about Duke and the difference between the Volunteers and with all these different categories and rankings they got, Duke is basically number one in all of them. You know, it's like when you look at the net, Duke. When you look at the strength of schedule and non-conference strength of schedule, Duke by a landslide. You know, the Ken Palm, Duke, the BPI, Duke. I mean, it just go on. I mean,
think about it. There's an aspect of Duke's game that I don't think anybody pays a lot of attention to because it's not something that that's all that sexy or anything like that. But look at the way that Duke plays defense. They are one of the best defensive teams in the country with steals and block shots that they are making, rebounds that they're getting. I mean, and granted, so we should be talking about Duke's offensive power. I get it. But, man, between Zion and between Trey Jones, those jokers are playing some amazing defense. And once again, another week goes by, and Trey Jones doesn't get the respect he deserves for the way that he handles the defensive positions that he gets.
I don't think he's – and it's bad to say this, but I don't think that's ever going to come – when you have the other 3 cats on the floor, right? It doesn't matter unless he starts scoring or starts blocking shots like Zion or starts jumping I just don't think it. And I know how big a role he plays. Don't get me wrong. Right. I'm not saying that. But the clout, the recruiting that came with Zion and RJ Barrett, as unfortunate as it may be, Trey Jones might just continue to be the afterthought until these players leave, right? And obviously Trey, I'm not saying Trey could go, right? He can be gone. But, we'll see how much of impact, because I can guarantee if he goes to an NBA team, he's going to make just as big of an impact as he is for that team because, that point guard position is very valuable. And when you could play the role that he's playing for a team, I mean, it's just you need that.
I've said it before, we'll say it again. He's not the best player on the team, but he is the most important player on the team because everything changes when that guy's not on the floor.
No, without a doubt. I just think that you have Zion.
Yeah, I get it.
And then as long as Zion's on your team, it's the same thing with LeBron. LeBron goes to teams, everybody's overshadowed. It doesn't matter. That's why Kyrie Irving leaves. He's overshadowed. He wants to be the guy. He learns that being the guy is not what it's all cracked out to be, so maybe I want to join LeBron again, right? Yeah. So it's one of those things that
I would.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, if I know I'm going to have a chance every year to go to the finals and maybe, okay, we lose it, but at the end of the day, as long as we have can fit a few pieces together, why not? Why not continue to ride the ship until it fully sinks? Because
let's do it.
LeBron's not going to be there forever. But when you look at it, now we talked about obviously a little bit of the power rankings. Let's transition over to the bubble watch because this is pretty interesting.
Man.
This is something that we continue to watch. You have teams that are solidified. You have teams that are going to be locks, which you're going to have those 12 teams that come in. Mm-hmm. You're going to have the bids from traditional one-bid leagues, which have the 23 teams that are going to get in. But then you have the bubble. And
Right.
and a lot of people think of the bubble as the first 4 in, the last 4 out, whatever, and that's traditionally how we view it. But man, the bubble right now, where we sit, there are 38 teams fighting for 33 available spots outside of the 12 and the 23 I mentioned. So
Right.
this is very interesting.
And you got 18 teams that, according to this list, should be in.
Yep.
And then you got about 20 teams that still got some work to do. And we're just going to kind of break this up by a couple of conferences and go through it, man. I really find this extremely interesting to see. All right, we know that certain teams are locked in. They're going to be there no matter what. But it's the teams that are still scrapping, the teams that are still fighting, that have a chance to still make it in there. And once you get in, anything can happen. Hello, UConn.
Exactly. So let's talk about, while we're getting right into it, let's start off with the ACC.
Yep.
And so when you look at it, the locks, the traditional locks that we know that unless the world ends, right? Virginia, Duke, and North Carolina. Exactly. They're going to be your guarantees for this year.
All 3 of those are in the top 10 right now.
Exactly. So then you look at who should be in, and let's start there because we have one team that everybody, didn't give too much love to. They made a lot of noise with an NC State, but then you have teams like Louisville, Virginia Tech, Florida State, and Syracuse that should be in.
Right. And I agree with every single one of those. All 4 of those teams let's say 3 of those teams are in the top 25 right now. Syracuse has been flirting with it. They have progressively gotten better. I think they've started being able to shoot the ball a little bit better. They still play that zone defense that gives everybody a fit, that gives everybody a trouble. They could be a tough out for anybody. I could see them certainly squeezing in there at right around an 11 seed or something like that, kind of hanging out there. And let's not forget as well, yes, there might have been some quotation marks around it, some parentheses around it, and a little asterisk around it, but they did beat Duke in Cameron. Let's not forget that. Trey Jones did go down in that game. Cam Reddish was out in that game, but they did beat Duke, and that still got to carry some weight.
Stop right there.
No.
Did you just hear what you said and who was not there and who was out and who was sitting on the bus and who was sleeping in a tent? Did you just not hear what you just said?
They still won.
I got it. But there's a whole bunch of people that were missing out of that puzzle. And I'm saying Duke is awesome, okay? But if you take away their nucleus and you take away this part and that part, they're not the same team. And so whether they got the win or not, it's like, hey, everybody, all our star players were sitting. You win. Good job for you. But at the end of the day, I got it, okay? But for me, what sticks with me here is Florida State, 18-5, right, currently. Right. And so they have good wins, not only over Purdue and LSU, but this good Louisville team that has made some impressive moves lately, but they've actually it's funny because they get locked in at a 4 seed for this first initial rankings and they go off and lose, so we could put an asterisk beside their 4 seed. But at the end of the day, Florida State's losses to Pittsburgh and Boston College really hurt them. But man, when you look at some of the, their only other 3 losses were Villanova, Virginia, and Duke. So those aren't, like I said, we talked about this earlier. Right. They have 3 losses that are, I hate to say quality losses, but they're not against scrubs.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so 3 of those 5 losses again were legit. But man, let's just talk. And we've mentioned this team, but this NC State Wolfpack team, man, come on. They're still hanging around. They still got a shot here. They got a tough stretch coming up where they host Syracuse this week and then pay a visit to Duke in Durham. They could get it done.
Look, they have a good coach in Kevin Keats. He's got the guys playing around. But even with wins like that, I still don't know that the committee is going to overlook the 24-point outpouring that they had against Virginia Tech.
That's
a
hard.
Week ago.
Yeah, right.
I just don't know that you get around that. I understand that NC State's got some work to do. I think they got to go undefeated to be able to still overcome. And even then, I don't know if it's enough. But that 24-point outpouring, man, is just it's painful.
Yeah, and their only real chance to make some noise. I mean, they got some chances, but let's just move on because I don't even want to get down that road.
All right, well, let's jump into the Big 12 then.
Yeah, let's talk about the Big 12. So we got the locks, right? Yeah, obviously Kansas. I mean, that's it. But and then it's a big mess after that, And so who should be in? We're looking at Texas Tech, Iowa State, and Kansas State with a lot of work to do for everybody else, which is Baylor, TCU, Texas, and Oklahoma.
I tell you, I'm a little bit surprised that Texas Tech isn't considered a lock at this point. Granted, the wheels could completely fall off. I understand that, but Texas Tech has been up there in the top 25 pretty much the entire season. They played well against Duke. They're not exactly the best team or anything like that, but but at the same time, I mean, this is a good team that I think would do well in the NCAA tournament.
I would agree with that. They just got to go out there and take care of business against teams over the next several days, like the Oklahoma States and the Baylors and Kansases that are still left on their schedule.
True story.
Let's move on and talk about a little bit about, because I just don't want to really spend too much time anymore on the Big 12 because there's so many question marks there.
Right.
But when you look at it, let's touch a little bit on the Big East because, again, a lot of question marks there and a few teams like Marquette, which I would say is going to be a lock.
Yep.
And then you got Villanova, which should be in. But what is your take on that?
Yeah, so, first of all, let me just say this about Marquette. Once again, a team that probably isn't getting enough love. They are playing really, really good. I mean, they're ranked number 10 in the nation right now. You just don't hear a whole lot about them just because they're not a blue blood or anything like that. They're not a top-tier program all the time. But Marquette's playing really good. Villanova will make it in. I don't see the committee keeping them out this season. They're playing really, really well. They played a great game against Marquette, even though they lost it. I mean, in that heartbreaking fashion, they still won. They had some ugly losses at the beginning of the season, which we talked about ad nauseum. But they kind of began to right the ship, and I think we knew that was going to come too because this was such a young team, and they lost the players from last year when they won the national championship. So they had to get the chemistry right. They started doing that now. I see Villanova making it in.
Yeah, and some of the teams that still have work to do: St. John's, Seton Hall, Butler, and Creighton. So they got to tighten up a little bit.
True story.
Let's move on to the Big Ten, which is a little more, is definitely doing better than the last two conferences we talked about as far as locks.
Right.
When you look at the teams that should be locks currently in the Big Ten, you got Michigan State, Michigan, and Purdue, and other teams that should be in that just good one day, not good the other day is Wisconsin, Maryland, and Iowa.
Right. Wisconsin, I would put them a little bit closer to lock than should be in.
Yep.
They've had some ups and some downs, but they've got some really impressive wins too. So I don't know that you can knock that. Maryland sitting there, they got a good team. They got to be more consistent. And then you got Iowa there. I think Iowa's going to be on the outside looking in. The team that I wanted to talk about was under work to do. You had Ohio State, Minnesota, and Indiana. There's no way for me that I can see Indiana making it in, man. We talked about them a couple weeks ago. Could head coach Archie Miller turn things around for this team? Man, no, it's not happening. Indiana is not making it into this year's tournament unless they go on some miraculous run and they win their tournament. It's not happening.
I would have to agree with that. Even though they run the table, yeah, but the likelihood of that happening, not very.
No, I agree.
Let's move on to the Pac-12. This is just funny to me.
I don't want to talk about this.
Yeah, it's like, who wants to talk about the Pac-12? We'll just mention them real quick. We don't have to spend much time on it. But there's the funny thing, there's no lock.
There's no lock.
Right? And so you look at it and like, what? You want to wipe your eyes a little bit. But so who should be in Washington and work to do Arizona State?
The Pac-12 is going to get a team in the tournament, and that's going to be it.
A team.
They're going to get one team in the tournament, and that's it.
And that's the guaranteed lock for winning the conference championship, right?
Bingo. Bingo.
That's when you know your conference is struggling.
And I would like for it to be Arizona State simply because Bobby Hurley is a Duke grad. But, I mean, at this point, I don't even know if that's going to be the case.
True. Let's move on to the SEC, which, man, obviously we cannot bypass Tennessee and Kentucky. They're locks.
And they play this Saturday, by the way. They play this Saturday night, man. It's going to be a great game.
Huge. And then so should be in, which I've seen LSU, Mississippi State, and Auburn. And those are very interesting because, we've seen how Auburn could play. We've seen LSU and Mississippi State. These are some talented teams.
Man, I'm a little surprised at how far Auburn has fallen this season. They were up there in the top 10. They played Duke early on in the season, and they played Duke really, really well. But then they just kind of, as it got into conference play, man, Auburn began to fall off the map a little bit. So it'll be interesting to see what the committee does with them. But man, I'm just really shocked at how far they've fallen this season.
quickly, right?
Quick,
Again,
yeah.
we've seen them play. We've seen how talented they are, but when you can't put it together, it's just hard. Let's move on to the American Conference real quick. We'll talk about the lock in Houston. We'll talk about the should be in Cincinnati, and work left to do is UCF and Temple.
Houston is a team that, once again, people aren't talking about. Man, they got one loss on the season. I get that they play in the American Conference. I understand that. But one loss is still one loss. Now, I probably should be saying the same thing about Nevada, but I can't do that. But Houston's playing really, really well. Yeah, they should be a lock. Cincinnati's a good team, but they just inconsistent again, not being able to hit outside shots when they need to when they're in close games. But they should make it in. I'm with them on that. UCF and Temple, I just don't know that there's enough time and there's enough competition for them to still be able to get in.
Without a doubt. So when you look at the others that are out there, I mean, you talk about the lock in Gonzaga, obviously. We know those boys can play. The should-be-ins, in Nevada and the Buffaloes. I mean, obviously those teams, we know they can ball. And so when you look at it, it's just interesting, right? Because you still have Nevada sitting at a 4 seed with a projected 4 seed, obviously, with that 21-1 record or 23-1 record, whatever they got going on right now. But it's one of those teams that I just can't be a buyer in because they do not play anybody.
And that's the crazy thing, man. You played one ranked opponent this season. You're not going to play anybody else of any real top tier competition until you make it into the NCAA tournament. That's tough. I mean, that's tough as a team to make sure that you're up and you're ready to go for that when the competition really gets serious.
Yeah, no doubt. It's like, man, how awesome would it be to see that team run through it? They're just not going to do it.
No. Yeah,
it's like as much as people want to say, they can make it past the first round. I got it. I just don't see a Nevada or a Buffalo making a deep run this year. That's just me personally.
No, I'm with you on that, and I would imagine that most of the country is with you on that.
So let's take a look at just real quickly and just go over the big games we have going on this week.
Man, this is an insane week for college basketball, man. It is. I mean, you got ranked opponent playing ranked opponent all week long. Monday night, tonight, where we're recording this, you got a big matchup. Number 4 Virginia, coming off of a tough loss to Duke, is traveling to number 8 UNC, man. That is going to be a huge game for the ACC. It's also going to be a huge game for the country at large. Tuesday, you got number 2 Duke going up against number 16 Louisville. Big game there. Number 12 Purdue going against 24 Maryland. 19 LSU going up against number 5 Kentucky. And number 11 Michigan State going up against number 20 Wisconsin. All 4 of those games are on Tuesday night. That just blows my mind. We get a little bit of a breather until we go into Saturday night. Saturday, you got number 24 Maryland going up against number 6 Michigan. Number 23 Iowa State playing number 18 Kansas State. And then what looks like it's going to be the game of the week.
Game.
Number 1 Tennessee going up against number 5 Kentucky. Huge game for some major implications for the SEC and the nation as a whole.
Without a doubt. And so immediately after we jump off this podcast and in this episode, I'm definitely tuning in the Virginia-UNC game. And when you look at it, the Duke and LSU game will be my Tuesday. Obviously, I'll follow everybody else because that LSU-Kentucky game is going to be big. Yep. But, man, when you look at that Tennessee-Kentucky, that's going to be another huge game. And we're just treated to throughout this season. I mean, it just seems like these great teams are playing against each other. And it's just like always, it's amazing to watch and to see how these teams do from week in to week out and see how they can solve these riddles, whether it's injuries, whether it's, them not meshing, learning how to play together. It's just incredible to see how these teams respond and how these coaches make adjustments, especially in the spots they're put in.
I love college basketball. That's it.
That's it, brother. All right, man. That wraps up this episode. Like always, my man, it was great spending the last hour with you talking some college sports.
Hey, man, I love this, man. Thank you so much, College Sports Hour Nation, man. This is so much fun. Thanks for hanging in there with us, man. Clint, once again, thanks for hooking this thing up, man. I am having a blast talking college football, college basketball with you. Man, this is so much fun. Looking forward to next week already.
I can't wait, man. So, guys, thank you so much for listening to episode 22 of the College Sports Hour. Make sure to check out our new website at collegesportshour.com. We have partnered with Radio Public to host our website. This website is drive just for the podcast individual that likes listening to the podcast. It doesn't have, a million bells and whistles, a million pages, but it does have what you're interested in, and that is our podcast, our show, and it's going to be fun, guys. Again, check that out at collegesportshour.com and support us by listening to us through our website or the Radio Public app. And the cool thing about this, guys, and the cool thing, let me just explain to you, like, why this is important to us. Radio Public is a free podcast app you can get it on an iPhone, you can get it on your Android. The cool thing is they have user-created playlists and collections like a lot of the other apps out there that you can download your episodes while on Wi-Fi to listen without using your mobile data. You can stream our podcast episodes without waiting for a download, which is cool. And you can also queue episodes to create a personalized and continuous playlist. Download it through the App Store. Get it on Google Play. That is Radio Public. That is an app that you can download directly to your phone, and it helps us, and we can measure and we can see what you're listening to and how many people listen to it. Is great, guys. So we just encourage you to listen to us through there, guys, and make sure to like and continue to follow us on Facebook. We want to give a special shout out, like always, to our family and friends, to include all of our listeners, guys, our followers and subscribers. Thank you for letting us continue to do what we do. And don't forget, guys, to join us next week for another episode of the College Sports Hour.